lot of people have difficulty interacting in social situations and being able to talk to adults really well. And that just, because it's always scarier in your head than it is actually doing it. Because nobody's gonna like laugh at you, they're not gonna make fun of you. Everybody understands, like, being an employee and talking to other people can be difficult. It can definitely be difficult. But it's a great way to learn how to talk to people face to face, because it's a key that you'll always need to have.
Yeah. Noah, excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here.
So we're going to talk about the modern workplace today, and I think you've got a unique perspective given the role you play and your experience in the workplace today. So before we jump into that and some of the challenges that you see, for the listeners that haven't been maybe following me on social media or seen kind of your journey that I've occasionally posted on social media, tell us a little bit about what job do you hold today and how long have you held it?
I am a manager at Jersey Mike's, and I have worked there since February of 2021. And the job's been pretty good. I've been a manager for over a year now, and I've had some difficulties and some great accomplishments there. And it's been a great learning experience to be a manager.
Did you write that down before you came in?
I did not.
No, you just knew that just off the top of your head. That was pretty good, Noah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. By the way, of course, everyone knows I talked about this as we're setting up the show. Noah is my son. So if you're coming in midway, you may get some snarky banter because that's what happens with dads and sons get on the same show together. It was definitely the case when I had Abby on my show. So also, just so people know your age, how old are you? What grade are you going into? Where do you go to high school?
I am 17. I'm going to be a senior at Roswell High School next year, or in the fall, at least.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm going to go all the way back in time. When you made the decision to get a job,
yes,
tell us a little bit about what went into your mind. Why did you choose to spend some time? Because we didn't say to you, hey, Noah, you have to go get a job. We encouraged you, but we wasn't like a requirement. It was more motivated by yourself. You wanted to get a job. So tell us about why you wanted to get a job. And then let's talk about why you chose Jersey Mike's.
First of all, I wanted a job. I mean, I had gotten a car, and I needed gas money.
A 2012? 2010 Ford F-150 to be more specific, right?
Yeah.
Which I mentioned that to the listeners because when we say gas money, we're saying gas money with a capital G because it does take a lot of gas to keep that truck going.
I mean, it's like $250 a month. I don't know.
Okay.
For gas. But I needed the gas money, but I also wanted a job for a while, but I waited until I was 16 because the jobs that were available to me before I was 16 were about basically just Publix and Brewster's, and I kind of wanted something a little bit more than that. And I chose Jersey Mike's because I'd gone to Jersey Mike's as a kid, and I really liked that environment and the work environment, and I also wanted to go on the slicer because that looked fun.
And so for those who don't know what a slicer is, what's the slicer?
It's like a meat slicer like you'd see at a deli, and you basically slice meats where we slice them fresh right for you, like for the sandwich that's right in front of us. But that's and I chose Jersey Mike's because I really actually saw that it was a good place to work, and kind of I enjoyed as being there as a customer. So I believed in being there as a worker could also be beneficial.
And to be fair, you've always liked sandwiches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you could have gone to Subway.
No.
No.
Okay. No.
You could have gone to Jimmy John's.
Definitely not.
Okay. But you chose Jersey Mike's because for you liked their subs better. Mm-hmm. And I distinctly remember there was a time when you were a lot younger, you used to make sandwiches and take them to school, mm-hmm. and people liked your sandwiches so much they would trade food with you.
Yeah.
For your sandwiches.
Yeah.
So making sandwiches has always been something you've enjoyed doing.
Yes.
Okay, so you go to Jersey Mike's. Let's start down that path a little bit more. We'll get up to today and the challenges today. But what were your original first learnings? What were some of the challenges you had when you first got the job, if you can remember? What were some things that were challenging for you that that you had to either learn or work on?
The initial challenges were, first I had to drive 30 minutes to my job because I was still waiting on a different location to open that was closer to my house. And So that took like a month-ish, a little bit over that.
And that was the location you were going to while you were training.
Yes, the location I was going to is about 30 minutes away, but then the location now is about 5 minutes away, 5 to 8 minutes away. But some initial challenges were the management that I had. I was the people that were managing me were also teenagers because I was working night shifts rather than day shifts, and that they were terrible. They were pretty awful. So that was the initial challenge that I had, and so that did stick with me. It was a great example of what not to be. But that was before I knew I wanted to be a manager or was going to be a manager. I mean, there were some initial challenges of like getting down some of the work things, like just getting better at the job initially and things like that. But that always comes with time. But what doesn't come with time is like having a better manager. That just it takes time for replacement, but not time for the person to become a better manager, unless they really want to.
So if I was to frame it differently, we could say what's in your control is learning how to make a better sandwich or operating a slicer better or learning how to use the grill or what that's in your control. Yes. But your manager is your manager, and it's hard to you can figure out ways to maybe make that a little smoother, but you can't change them. That's a little less in your control.
Very true. Yes.
Okay. So then you moved over to the location closer and continued kind of working there. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you got promoted to shift lead or some kind of management responsibility.
Yeah.
What was that transition like for you?
Well, I liked it a lot better because it came with a little bit of a raise because I was making $7.50, then I went up to $8.50, and the raise came to $10 an hour.
So you were making $7.50 an hour when you started. Now, just to put it in context for everyone listening, starting jobs today for your store would not be $7.50 an hour, right?
No, they couldn't be.
Because you wouldn't hire anybody because of the market's gotten so tight. So this was just a year and a half ago, you started at $7.50.
Yeah. And where were we again? You said
so. What did you like about that moving into that manager role? Some of those kind of things you learned.
I had a little more control over the situations, and I could control shifts better, and that was better for kind of how the flow of the store and situations like that. It just made it a little bit better, a little bit easier, and I could kind of I didn't have to deal with as many difficulties head on, if that makes sense. Like I didn't have to deal with kind of just as coworkers. It was a little bit different.
So say a little more about that and help me understand that. When you say you didn't have to deal with it kind of head on, what do you mean?
Meaning that like I was able to control situations a little bit better. I didn't have to kind of go to my boss to have a situation controlled for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could have a conversation directly rather than with a little more of authority because you had the manager title or shift lead title versus if you've got a peer that's not working, you have to go kind of tell your manager to make them work.
Yes.
What's interesting is you're talking about what you like. You like the job, like managing people. Talked about what you didn't like. Some of the early managers, you learned a lot on what not to do. You haven't mentioned anything about customers yet. So I'm curious, what was your experience with customers? Anything that you liked about managing or dealing with customers, or anything that was challenging about dealing with customers?
Well, there's always going to be the bad customers. That's just in every industry. There's always bad customers. They always think that they're right or sometimes, and then it's just difficulties and managing that. But as a manager, when there is a dispute with a customer, you're the one called on to manage it and to fix it. And sometimes that can actually be better because then you get to neutralize the situation rather than like the hot-headed employee. Because I've had that in many cases where the employee does not do it very well, or they get agitated, which you don't want to get agitated back because that just creates more conflict. But sometimes customers can be great, and that's something to always notice. Like you can always have a regular, like we always have a regular at Jersey Mike's that comes in every single day at the same time.
Really?
It's the same thing, sits in the same place.
Is this lunch or is this dinner?
This is lunch.
Okay.
Comes in at like 11:30, sits in the same spot, gets the same thing every day, and he's great. But then there's always those other customers. But you got to know is the better customers are going to stay longer. They're going to stay longer, and they're going to come back more frequently.
Huh. That's great. Have you noticed any changes with customers over the pandemic? I mean, have you seen customers get nicer or meaner, or has it really been about the same?
I would say that as people got a little less freaked out by like COVID and everything like that, they got a little bit better.
Okay.
Because they started making real personal connections and they weren't scared to talk to you. And it was also easier to hear what they were ordering when they weren't wearing a mask, which was nice. But there was more personal connection, which is very good for both parties involved.
Okay.
Makes you feel less like a robot.
Yeah, that's great. So just in a measurable way, have you seen, overall generally, have you seen tips go up, tips go down, or tips stay about the same?
I'd say they've gone up a little bit, but they stay about the same. Stay about the same rate, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about when people who are listening to this right now, and they may have a teenager at home, or maybe a teenager that's listening to this right now, and they're thinking about getting a first job. What advice would you have for them? Is it would you recommend it? What kind of advice might you have about getting a job? And then we'll talk about kinds of jobs you might recommend.
First of all, get a job. It's a great idea. If you can fit it in, do it. I definitely recommend that. Even if it's for like a few months and then you have to start a sport again, it's a great idea to get a job. As long as you can manage it. And it definitely helps with time management because now you have to fit something into your schedule and manage school and maybe a sport, and it helps with time management if you can manage it. Getting the job is actually easier than you think it would be, but the biggest advice I would give is don't always follow the money, because sometimes if a job is hiring at more money, it can be definitely influential based on why are they hiring at such high money. It can be the management is really terrible, they have a very short staff, or the job sucks. And those are the three biggest reasons that I've seen. And my friends started working for this restaurant across the street, and it was paying more. It was paying $15 an hour, but the management wasn't as great, and that's why you shouldn't follow the money.
So just knowing, don't always follow the money. I think it's a great piece of advice. So are there any other kinds of jobs you might recommend as good learning experiences? Is it, quick service restaurants? Is it working at a grocery store? What are other places you think might be good experiences for a first job?
Really, any first job is great, as long as you don't just follow just the money. If you look into the job, that's the biggest key. There are places that I wouldn't work, like a Target wouldn't be a great start because that's following the money because they're hiring at like $15 an hour. So just doing a job just to follow the money wouldn't be great because you'll get into the job, then you'll leave the job really quickly. So going to a place where you can work your way up is a great way to go.
You might be able to work your way up at a Target, possibly, right? But just knowing the commitments. I've also heard some places, and Target's not alone in this, retailers are going to have one of the trade-offs of that money is you're going to be expected to work on perhaps holidays or other days or times of the week that may be more challenging for your schedule. So just knowing, again, goes back to your point, knowing what can you fit in, what can you commit to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got some great ideas around don't follow the money. Make sure you kind of fit it into your schedule. Any first job is good. Would you recommend a customer-facing job? Do you think that's good to learn, like interacting with customers every day?
I think it would. Even if you're introverted, I'd still think interacting with customers would be great, especially if you're introverted, actually. Because, a lot of people have difficulty interacting in social situations and being able to talk to adults really well. And that just... because it's always scarier in your head than it is actually doing it. Because nobody's going to laugh at you. They're not going to make fun of you. Everybody understands being an employee and talking to other people can be difficult. It can definitely be difficult. But it's a great way to learn how to talk to people face to face because it's a key that you'll always need to have.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this idea of getting a job. Now you've actually had the chance of you've interviewed for jobs, but now you've also interviewed people for jobs. So talk to me about when people come into Jersey Mike's in the interview and you say to yourself, oh gosh, he's 15 or she's 15, but we've got to hire them. What makes a really good interview for a 15 or 16-year-old? And what's not a good interview?
First of all, the greatest interview that I had a few weeks ago. And there were a few things that made them really stand out. And the things that really made him stand out were he had a good experience, because experience is key, and experience actually matters a lot. Because when they have more experience, people don't realize that it's actually extremely easy to train people. Like that it's actually easier to train people with experience than it is with no experience. That's why it's also easier to hire like someone, a returning employee, rather than like a new employee, because you don't have to train them. Because training actually takes a little bit of time, and it also requires money to be put into that training experience. So the fact that they already had experience was really good, and then the eye contact that they were making was great. And the fact that they would look me in the eyes, and he would also talk to me, and he was asking questions was great. He was asking questions about the job, like how much is starting, and that was great questions. So I could really tell that he wanted the job, and he was actually looking into the job. And on my end, I was answering those questions and providing communication and providing little details about the job.
That's great. So not only does the person have experience, which tells you, hey, this person's easier to train. So even if their experience might not be always working, just try and show your experience.
Yes.
And the second thing is that eye contact was really important, because I'm sure you imagined, okay, this is how they're going to interact with a customer.
Exactly.
They're going to make eye contact. They're going to ask questions. If they don't understand and the person says, well, I want a number 7, and they mumble, they can say, well, do you want a Mike's way? They can ask more clarifying questions. Okay, excellent. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about some of your maybe not as fun experiences with coworkers. Okay, so without naming any names.
I'll try that.
We're not naming any names. We're going to, when you think about the coworkers that have not been easy to work with, because this is learnings for people listening to this. What are the things that you don't want to do? If you do these things, it's going to give you a bad reputation at work.
You don't want to be lazy. That's a big thing. You don't want to be lazy. If somebody else is working, you want to make sure like that you don't have anything to do.
So what does lazy look like?
Lazy looked like that when I was doing all the jobs, doing all the little details about the jobs, like doing prep work for a close, for the openers and the next day.
And close is, again, for people who don't know your world, close is when you're closing down the store, which means you need to clean everything up, get everything set up, so when the folks come in the next morning and open, it's all ready for them.
Exactly. And doing some prep work, like so that they don't have to do it later, so they have like food backed up and other things cut and ready to go, so that they won't run out of it. They have the backups right there, like during a lunch rush. That's very key. And what was not great was when my employees were or my coworkers were sitting down and they weren't doing anything, and then I tell them maybe to do something, which as a boss, it's not very fun to have to always micromanage people and have to tell people what to do, have to tell people to do their job. It's not a fun thing, actually. I mean, that's why people hate their bosses, is because they tell them what to do and everything like that. But I mean, trust me, I don't want to have to do it, micromanage them. But when they don't do anything and I'm stuck doing everything, it's not very fun. It actually made me feel like a teacher, like a frustrated teacher that's trying to make them do something. And I actually was not having any fun at the job when I had to micromanage people.
Okay, so the lazy's one.
Lazy's one.
And that's going to frustrate whoever's the shift leader. And so try and take that ownership and initiative, right? Which is important. Don't just sit back. I'm assuming when they're sitting down at the tables, they're just on their phones.
Yeah.
While you're working around in the back trying to get everything ready.
Yeah.
And they're in the front in the dining room just on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So lazy's one. Is there anything else that you would say, avoid these things in your first job or second job, or really for any of us in our careers, because this isn't going to go well?
I'd also say not really not listening to people when they're trying to teach you. Like if you're new to the job, it's very key that you like try to learn how to do the job, especially if you've had prior jobs that like do this similar job, like but do it a little bit differently. It could be very key to adjusting to the new environment. Like so we have to like saran wrap things at the end of the night and kind of wrap it up to make sure it stays fresh and so that it doesn't go bad or anything, and it also has to be wrapped up. But like I had an employee that did it a little bit differently at different jobs, and I could tell that it wasn't working as well because the saran wrap was like loose, and you could tell that it was like on there. And the goal of the saran wrap is to make sure like it's very tight, and then you can't really like you can almost not even notice that it's there because then there's like no air that's going in there, so it'll stay fresh. But this employee like really wouldn't listen to me as much, and that created frustration between both of us, which wasn't productive.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I think even people later in their careers can have that same experience.
Yeah.
They come from one company, they've always done it this way, they go to another company, and they need to make sure they're listening and making those adjustments, not just doing it the way they've always done it at their other company. Yeah. Sounds like those are the two big ones. Are there any others, any other frustrations that you would say that people need to try and avoid when they're in those jobs?
Respecting other people's hard work is very big, and acknowledging and respecting like people's work. So definitely like giving compliments to people's work is a big thing as a manager. Very big thing.
Yeah. So respecting people's work, making sure we're giving compliments and recognizing that as a manager is a really, really important piece.
Recognition is extremely important for an employee. It's actually a very big thing. Everyone wants recognition. Everybody does. Everybody wants to be told that they're doing a great job. And when people are doing a bad job, I mean, the best way to do it is be like, hey, that was pretty good. You did this right, but try this out just a little bit differently, and that'll be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more of that kind of yes and approach. Here's the stuff that's working well, and let's try and improve over here.
Because just tearing people down doesn't work. It actually makes them want to quit. And I've seen it a lot, and I've experienced it a lot, and it never works well.
Yeah.
Just tearing down.
So just to keep us current and modern and right now and today, is it hard to find people to come work at Jersey Mike's, or just in general? I mean, are you having a hard time finding people?
It is all seasonal, I'd say, actually, because a lot of the people that work, that we don't realize, a lot of people that work, the biggest people that are taking lower level jobs are high schoolers and like people who are still in school. So like high schoolers and sometimes college people, but college people are definitely always seasonal, usually unless it's near the college. And immigrants. So high schoolers, so students and immigrants are the people that are taking the lower level jobs. And so that means it's going to be seasonal to when you're going to get those people. So we're going to get a lot of students that are working. Their availability is going to open up during the summer. And so we're going to get a lot of people that are going to work during the summer, and then they're going to quit when the school year starts. So we have a lot of summer job people. So it's really easy to find people during the summer. It's hard to find people during like the middle winter months. So like the winter, it's hard to find people. Less people are coming in looking for jobs, and less people are like coming in just for business. So that's why it's definitely seasonal for hiring people.
Yeah. No, this is great. So any other piece of advice you'd give for people listening to this that maybe are thinking about getting a job, or how to kind of navigate in that kind of that world of whether it's entry level or it's hospitality or it's quick service or it's retail? Any other piece of advice you might have?
My first piece of advice would be just do it. We really just get the job. I mean, I know if it's your first job, it sounds scary and it might feel scary interviewing and getting the job. I was definitely there. I've been there. I understand it, but it's much easier when it's done. And you'll get a month into the job and you'll be comfortable with it, because the first day is always going to be awkward because it's new people, new environment. They're comfortable in the environment. You're not suited to the environment just yet. But that's a big one. Working with your friend might not be a great idea. I have worked with my friend before, and being the boss of your friend might not be a great idea. My advice in that instance is probably make friends at work. Try not to outsource a friend into work.
Yeah.
Um, and again, don't follow the money for every job. Definitely research into the job. And my advice is definitely have a first boss so that you can know how to manage people better, what you're looking for in a boss if you want to continue like being the employee. And if you want to be the employer, then you get to know what to do right as a boss, because you'll get to learn how to do what is wrong as a boss. And definitely seeing from each boss, I've learned what to do right and what to do wrong. And that's a great key, is having bosses, because you get to learn what to do wrong without having to do it wrong. And that's a big thing. Yeah.
Dude, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course.
I really, really appreciate it. I learned a lot. So thank you. And I could ask you what you plan on doing next, but we'll save that for another show.
Alrighty. Thank you for having me.
I love my conversation with Noah. Frankly, that's the first time I've ever had him on the podcast. I've had Abby, my daughter, on before, but never Noah. And I didn't think I was going to do an outro, frankly. I didn't think I was going to, at the end, have some notes at the end and takeaways other than just our conversation. But he said some things that I was surprised to hear. So he said something that we've talked about on the show before that everyone needs to be listening to. Don't chase the money. And sometimes when you see that big dollar sign, whether it's $15 an hour or $150,000, we need to be asking ourselves, why are they paying so much for that job? There could be stuff hidden under that. He really hammered home this idea of getting a job and the value of it. And what I was so thrilled to hear was he's learned so many things at 16 and 17 that he's not going to have to learn at 23. So for all you parents out there, please do us all a favor. Don't have your kiddos wait until they're 23 to get their first job, because all the things Noah just learned is what is going to happen on any time someone learns their first new job. So start early. And Noah preached that. He said, start early. And then he also learned the importance of giving appreciation, which we've all talked about on this show, and learning from some of those managers that have not always been the best and how that's shaped him. The last thing that I would say is, it was ironic. Right behind Noah in the studio was the cover of my latest and greatest book, The Author versus Editor Dilemma, The Leadership Secret to Unlocking Your Team, Your Time, and Your Impact. And I actually talk about Noah a little bit in that book. And I didn't expect him to hit the points of authorship and editorship as well as he actually did. So when we talk about an author, the author takes ownership, shows initiative, and displays critical thinking. And a lot of Noah's choices were really exemplary of that, in the sense that he really wanted to work at Jersey Mike's. He took initiative around that. I didn't tell him to go do that. He took ownership and he got that done. And then even the ways he's learned how to manage and lead others in that editor seat were also components that we can all continue to work on and really emphasize some of those components in the book. Now, he's on a journey. By no means is Noah perfect. He's got lots of learning to do. But he reminded us that some of those simple things that we learned in our first job that sometimes we take for granted are always present with us here today. So thanks for listening. And if you haven't gotten a copy of The Author versus Editor Dilemma, The Leadership Secret to Unlocking Your Team, Your Time, and Your Impact, I really encourage you to do that. There's even a chapter on parenting in there. So pick up your copy today, and I can't wait for our next episode.